Okay, welcome to the Wednesday meeting of the BOCC. Mike, I understand you want to start with two quick executive sessions?
Yes, good afternoon, Mike Moss, Public Services Director. We'd like to start our business meeting today with two executive sessions. The first one for 10 minutes for contract negotiations, and then follow up with a 5-minute real estate purchase / lease.
Okay, so we'll adjourn for two executive sessions, contract negotiations, 10 minutes, real estate purchase lease, 5 minutes.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 1:47 p.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 1:52 p.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 1:58 p.m.
Okay, back from executive session, no decisions rendered. We'll move along.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Mike Moss, Public Services Director. The next item we have is PFD bonds. And I'm not really the expert on this. I think a few people in this room are. As you can see, we have a little bigger audience than normal for our Public Works items. The county's attorney reached out to our office asking if we had received the blessing yet from the Board of County Commissioners to move forward with phase 1 and the funding, bonding for the project over at the PFD board, over the PFD. So I invited Kim, and then Kim invited, I believe, Kathy and Deb to be in the room today, the treasurer and finance director, to maybe have some discussion to make sure everybody's on board with phase 1 for the PFD Conference Center projects before the PFD and attorney and our county attorney works forward with the interlocal agreement. So they kind of want the green light from the board before they start into that interlocal agreement. So that's about all I know, so I'll turn it over.
I thought we
Kim.
did that when they were over here. We approved those bonds.
I know it was discussed, but I don't know if there was ever an official approval.
Okay.
The bonding, or the finance committee, excuse me, did recommend to issue the bonds. And a letter was given to you as the board as well as the Public Facilities District Board. But I don't know that there was any official blessing of that. And I think it's also there's 2 phases of the project, or there's 3 phases for the Public Facilities District project that they have with the master plan. Phase 1 is conference center centric, and the funding for that will be with these bonds, which has been discussed. The second phase is not fully funded. However, to move forward with the second phase is the potential of a multi-purpose facility across the street on 7th Avenue, which the Public Facilities District does not currently have jurisdiction over or any kind of a lease with. So I believe they're looking to amend the interlocal agreement with the PFD, or the county and the PFD, to include the property across the street so that they're able to do the exploratory and spend funds on what that facility might look like. So it's kind of 2-part, but the first part being the issuance of the bonds for phase 1 and getting that blessing. And also then phase 2, moving forward with the interlocal agreement on the property side of things. And this is all new ground for me, so I apologize. I don't know what the next step is, so that's why I'm here.
Phase 1, it's centric, you said. Is that realignment of the road and stuff?
Phase 1 includes the entryway, but it also includes a renovation of the existing event center, conference center.
But it does realign everything to 5th Avenue.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that is actually being funded by Rural Economic Development Funds and is in progress now. That goes to bid soon.
Right. Yeah.
But the rest of it is I believe about an $8 million project to add some breakout space and do some renovations, audio visual upgrades, things like that at the event center.
And
So
that's
the-
what the attorneys are asking our approval on.
That's what they need bonding capacity for.
I was sure we sit here and approve that recommendation.
Deborah Gardner, Cowles County Treasurer. They came and gave the presentation, but they didn't get the step where they got it approved by the Finance Committee. So at that time, we talked about them coming
Right.
to this. So they came to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee all agreed to give our recommendation to the board because it's ultimately your decision to issue the bonds under Cowles County for them. So I formulated the letter, gave it to you guys. I guess the confusion is what was the next step for them to finally get
Okay.
the board's approval to, and so they're already, they're working on, for phase one, but they didn't have the formal approval for you, so they need that. But our recommendation, when they came to us, it was, approximately $13 million that they want to, have the bonds issued for.
Mhm.
And that was gonna be in 2000, when was that? The fourth quarter of 2026 is when they're gonna go out for those bonds. So, they're moving forward to get there, and before we issue any bonds, we would need approval, but it's best to have the approval now for sure, because if they keep moving forward and you guys aren't interested in doing that, then what's the point?
So specifically, the attorneys want a motion from us that we're approving phase one of this project, and then that'll keep them satisfied.
Well,
Talking both Longview and ours.
for that first part, but then like Kim was discussing the phase two, and that includes that multi-purpose building that's over on that other piece of property. So how do they go about getting the approval for for them to build a multi-purpose building on that piece of property that you have control over? And that, I think that's how, Mike, the facilities got involved, is like, what are we doing with this piece of property?
Yeah, that question wasn't posed to us as much as I agree with your assessment that we should be involved, knowing what we're going to do with that property across the street, but also be involved with her board and the fair board. I believe that what the long-term goal of that piece of property is. Initially, it was just can we move forward with an interlocal agreement between the PFD board and the county on phase one? I don't know if it's on phase two at this point or not. Is it both phases?
So the interlocal agreement currently includes the conference center. That's the original interlocal agreement that they have financed and built the conference center. So improvements in that, the agreement exists. I believe they're wanting to extend or change the lease to include the property across the street, because in order to expend Public Facilities District monies on a project, which some exploring would cost money, they have to have control of the property that they're expending money on. And so phase two is a multi-purpose facility across the street.
So the question is, are we looking at interlocal agreement and change the lease for phase one and phase two at the same time, or just phase one for bonding purposes? Are you going out to bonds for phase one and phase two at this time, or just one?
It would be on part one, but Kathy and I's interpretation was they were talking the interlocal agreement for phase two.
At the same time?
A new interlocal agreement or amending the first one to include the new property?
I believe it's amending the original one to include additional property.
So that one I'm gonna have to get clear in my head, because I looked at it as different projects. I mean, this phase one can happen independently of phase two. Phase two, if you can't ever raise the money and nothing happens there. If the interlocal agreement, we're saying that we're willing to negotiate with them on that property, I mean, we're not giving it away, are we?
Right. And that,
I don't wanna commit the county to giving this away when I don't know anything's gonna come there.
exactly. And I
Okay.
know that Bronson Potter, their attorney, has been working with our county attorney on this interlocal. I haven't seen what that request has been, if there's a specific timeline, similar to what we have with the Longview Public Development Authority with the hotel property. There's a sunset clause on that. I don't know if there is a sunset clause going into the second or this second phase. But you're correct. Phase one, they have quite a bit of the money for already with their sales tax rebate, and they're asking for bonding capacity to be able to fulfill the entire project. Phase two, the reason that they're trying to do these kind of together-ish is because they're going with the design build method, and they're hoping to use the same firm for both projects. But in order for the company to start even exploring what phase two could look like, they can't spend any money on that until they have the commitment of the property, and the property is not in their current lease agreement, is my understanding.
Okay. I'm trying to be very careful that, and don't get me wrong, I believe in what they're doing over there. I like the projects. But I'm trying to be, I don't want to tie hands of future commissioners if a different use came up that they felt was higher and better use with that property. Do you kind of understand where I'm going here? I'm trying to figure out how strong it ties this commission to doing it. I want to be a partner with them and help them on that. I just don't want to tie it up forever.
I agree, and that's where I think a sunset clause or, I mean, I have operational concerns as well. In the interim, we do receive revenue from rental of that property that goes into a different budget. I
Right.
manage different budgets, so there is a revenue stream there that I would have concerns with. Now that revenue stream would have to go to a different place, so I do have concerns, but I think, so today it's two different issues. The one is the bonding issue with phase one and whether we or not they have the blessing for that. And then the second issue would be the interlocal agreement, which could be maybe sounds like it needs to be fleshed out a little bit better before you make a decision on that.
So is it we're giving an okay to work on an interlocal agreement, then we'll get a chance to look at and flush out details on it? I mean,
What is David?
or is it,
He says,
it's going to go into effect and it does whatever?
I want to make sure the board is wanting to continue to move down this road with the PFD with an interlocal agreement and lease. I please ask you to have the conversations with the commissioners to confirm.
But it doesn't, phase one does not commit us to phase two.
No.
Yeah. I'm okay working on an interlocal agreement. I just need to see how it's going to be worded that it doesn't tie hands up forever, if that makes sense. And if the attorneys are happy with us saying, okay, work on it, but we want to see the final product.
Yeah.
then-
That's probably the best route, that we can have a working session with the attorneys and make sure our two staffs are involved with those sessions.
Have our attorneys already looked at the current interlocal agreement? They looked it over and approved of it and
So the statement that this is an email from David Berger. Bronson told me that the PFD expects to start incurring money on phase two this summer. So he wants to get a new interlocal agreement and lease in place with the county regarding the real property upon which they are proposing to build the multi-purpose facility. My understanding from my conversation with him is that this gives the PFD concrete assurances that the county does want to move forward and the project, or excuse me, does want to move forward with the project and is necessary for audit purposes if they want to be able to spend PFD tax revenue on expenses.
Well,
So-
where I'm at on this, Kim, is I'm okay asking for a motion on phase one. I don't want to ask for a motion on this interlocal until everybody here gets a chance to see it and we get some input from them.
I agree with
Okay,
that. I
do you-
think that is the smart way to move forward. As Mike said, I think we all need to be in the same room before something is finalized on phase two.
Okay. You guys comfortable with?
To the best of my understanding of what's going on, yes.
Yeah. Well, phase one puts improvements in the center. It realigns the road, which they have some money for, and that's all in preparation for, we're still working on a hotel and I know the guy and I know he's getting close. I don't know if we'll get that final gap covered, but I know it's a lot smaller than it used to be. And then when all that's done, I think working towards the type of center that they're seeing in Centray and bringing tons of money into is worthwhile. I just don't want to commit that land if that never happens. I'm okay committing the bond on the first phase. I'm just not okay doing a commitment on an interlocal until I actually get to see it.
So what you would need from us is approval on the issuance of the bonds for phase one.
I think that's the route I would go.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah.
Move to approve the issuance of the bonds for phase one. PFD.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the issuance of bonds for phase one. Okay, let me just see if I have anybody. I don't think I have anybody raising hands or anything. Okay. We'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
And then I think David Berger is looking for approval to continue the conversation with the PFD on the interlocal agreement. I don't think he's looking for approval of the interlocal. It sounds like he just wants to make sure that he has the blessing of the board to continue with the conversation.
I would say not just the blessing, but the encouragement to come up with something that we can look at.
yeah, I think we're all on board with that. I just don't want to commit to a document I haven't seen.
Correct. I think he just wants the blessing to continue working on that with.
Okay,
I believe you got our blessing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim. The next item we have is landfill rock. I have stored all on there. So our current contract with Stored All ends June 30th. And I think we went to bid yesterday for our next season, which usually is July 1 through June 30th for rock at the landfill. We have a $365,000 contract for that rock. Unfortunately, we're at the end of that dollar amount. We're doing some major moves up there with our tippers, realigning some roads. We're moving our 3 tippers from one side of the landfill to the other and have to redo our road system and take out some curves. So we're looking at getting an additional $50,000, up to $50,000 in rock for the month of June to get us to the next contract that starts July 1. We're hoping to move these tippers in the next 3 to 4 weeks, so we definitely need that rock this month. Most years, we don't run against that cap of our rock. It just happened to be this year, we went through a lot of rock up there. So looking for your blessing today to spend up to another $50,000 with our current contract with Stored All for landfill rock.
up to 150?
No, just up to 50,
Up to
50.
50. Okay,
Yeah. And next year, we already did bounce, I think when Sean put the RFQ out yesterday, RFP, we actually increased the tonnage for next year, give us a little bit more capacity in case we need it.
yeah. And you guys all have this within budget.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's-
we're just up against the limit.
Yeah, okay.
So, you guys okay with that? Great. Thank you.
Is that rock used to make roads going into the landfill and stuff?
Correct, yeah, different sizes, usually 6-inch or 3-inch minus. So some jaw run, but we get a good base, especially when we're doing the roads out in the fill itself. You're getting some really soft material, so it takes a lot of times put down dryer filter mesh to kind of absorb the rock before it just all disappears on us. And we also try to repurpose as much rock as we possibly can, but once it goes in the fill, it has to kind of stay in the fill. You can't take it out because it's contaminated rock, so you have to use it in the place. So
But you can't move it from one spot to another in the landfill?
we do. We
Yeah,
do, we redo purpose it the best we can. That's why we put mats and dryer felt down so we don't lose it actually into the fill, but you lose a certain percentage each time.
I do know an amateur that likes to push rock around.
Come on up. Our last item is development review, and I believe Susan probably has some handouts for you.
This is off. Your machines have like the leveling sensors?
Oh, yeah.
That knows everything?
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah.
So good afternoon, Susan Eugenius. What Mike just handed out is the current list of projects that are active in Public Works Acela. This is up to date as of noon today. So unfortunately, I apologize about the colors being so similar. Our printer is doing something strange because one of those colors is supposed to be peach and the other is purple instead of two different shades of pink. There is currently 15 projects on our list. Of those 15, 2 are short plats, so that gets us down to 13. The ones that are the lighter shade of pink are ones where comments have been sent to the applicant. There are 2 on there, and I will be fully transparent that I sent emails to Building and Planning about this morning, asking them, are we reviewing this as a private road Class C or higher, or is this a private road D? So once I have that information, we can complete those reviews fairly rapidly. And then we have 1 road reclassification besides that. And then the McGuire, I know Patrick had sent some comments and I forgot to change that color over on those. So there's just a few out there that are waiting on Public Works. So we have made some progress on our list. The bottom 2 are residentials. 1 literally came in while I was making the list, and I know Sarah has gone out to look at the other one yesterday to get her comments in.
Susan, on these that are, like the ones that say incomplete, what does that mean and where does it go from there? Like the one in dark pink down at the bottom on 498 Leckler Creek.
So that particular project, I also wondered what incomplete meant. It is something that Building and Planning is waiting for another document in order to complete the processing of it. It is a short plat that is being submitted. So those darker pinks are ones that run through Acela for Building and Planning's tracking, but are not sent through Public Works through Acela. But the way the system's set up, it's a little quirk that it shows up in our Acela list. Because of the short plat process, they're physically still done on paper, especially the final plats, because they have to be signed by multiple people.
So does like that property in Castle Rock, does it just sit there unfinished for 5 years?
So the one on Leckler Creek,
Uh-huh.
I believe Building and Planning, the last list, and I'm debating showing you this, starting to keep a running tally so you can see which ones have gotten pulled off. Building and Planning is working with them to get all their documents. We had the one on the last list that said the same thing, which since then has been finished. So a month ago when I brought this, it was on there, said incomplete, and since then it's been completed and signed.
It's probably unusual, but not unheard of. We had that developer in Lexington who worked on that property for a long time. It was like 5 years or so. Sometimes it's actually on developers and the rates aren't right, or there's just something not right and they don't want to go forward, but they keep it open. What gets them on the list?
So this list is permit applications that Building and Planning has received through the Acela portal. And then they're noted as Public Works review. So there's Building and Planning review, there's planning reviews, there's Public Works reviews, there's EHU reviews, and then there's building. So for your physical building. This is the list of active incomplete tasks that Public Works is working on. So they're private roads, they're single-family homes, and what Public Works looks at, single-family homes and manufactured setting is, we make sure that they have a legal driveway, and if they're in the urban area, we make sure they complete their stormwater permit. So those two items are, you'll see them as residential and manufactured homes. Planning projects, that is a big catch-all, and Tracy can correct me if I'm wrong. It includes short plats, final plats, SEPAs, interagency reviews, which is an early stage of the planning process, and larger site plans. So it's a very broad document. So I try in the comments column to write down what it actually is. So that when I go in the next week, I can say, okay, this one was a short plat. I don't need to open it back up again to see what it is. But if it was something like a SEPA or a site plan review, I would go back and look at it, see if there was new documents.
So these all generate through Acela, and that's how they get on this report?
Yes,
Is that a simple way of saying it?
that's a simple way of saying it. Yes, I took way too many words. I
No,
apologize.
no, that's fine. And then you have other stuff. And I don't know where those fall. I got a note from a guy concerning 127 Lone Oak and 3025 Stella.
127 Lone Oak and 3025 Stella.
Gentleman, last name, probably Heim, H-E-I-M.
So 3025 Stella, which I was surprised didn't show up on this list, that is a private road.
Private road?
Yes,
Okay.
and so I sent them review comments. They emailed me comments on my comments. I have responded to those comments with clarifications, and I'm just waiting on the resubmittal.
But those didn't come through the permit process, so they didn't make it over to here?
So the Stella was on here at one point, and
Oh, okay.
the Lone Oak, I'd have to go look and see what that one is. Let me write that down. Was 127 Lone Oak?
127 Lone Oak
127 Lone Oak, okay,
and then 3025 Stella, which you just said.
okay.
Although it looks like Lone Oak is under, one's personal, Stella is personal, and the other is under his investments LLC.
Okay, I will go back and see what I can find on that one. Because that one's not ringing a bell with me.
Okay.
I know the Stella issue is they have a lot of rock so that they can't meet the road standards. And basically I asked them for a couple pieces of information, like, do you have a report saying that it's truly that rock that you can't meet the standards? And then two other minor things that were, show me this and then we can keep it moving.
With the new legislation with regards to the permits and the time restrictions, if that were the case right now with this list, where would we be? Would we not be, would we be having to pay people's fees back?
Tracy Jackson, Building and Planning. It's for GMA counties and it's strictly on the planning side, but yes, most of these we would be refunding all of their permit fees back. There's a quick timeline on the planning side that the state signed. So that would be most of these would be affected.
It's what they signed with GMA counties?
Those are only for GMA, correct? So we are off the hook on that, but I believe you had a resolution or something that you
Well,
at one time were gonna propose.
Yeah, it didn't, resolution didn't really specify timeframes. It was that we would develop timeframes, but I've kind of held back on it because I think when I think about it, you're incentivized for putting it through because
Correct.
then that's how you earn your operating funds.
Correct.
The more stuff you put through, you earn your operating funds. So why would you not find a way to get it through and do
We
another
try,
one?
yeah, because if they withdraw their permit for whatever reason, if we've only done a partial work, we still have to refund their money.
Yeah, so I'm always in favor of just letting business principles guide what you're doing there. And I haven't really seen an abuse of that. I think you want to get projects through because that's how you fund your
Well,
office.
it's how I keep people and it's how we keep the economy going around here is building houses. So we try.
So I guess my question on, back to, for my education and the public education, so I'm just going to pick one that's not even necessarily on here. So let's say that they submitted their permit, we reviewed it in 2 weeks and sent them comments. And then it sits with them for 2 months. Does that, the clock will stop?
The
Yes or
clock
no?
stops when
When
we get, once we do a review, either issue it or a portion of that, then the clock stops. And then when they resubmit, then the clock restarts.
So if they resubmit, let's say it's a really bad developer and they resubmit, they submit something, we bleed all over it, we send it back, they submit it back in, we review it again, and it is another thing that we bleed all over it. So is each submittal a 30-day timeline, or do we have 30 days total?
It depends on what type of permit, and it really doesn't matter, because we're not GMA, so, but
Right.
it's, every time basically we're touching it is the clock continues.
So a continuous clock. So if they submit garbage, we have 30 days review time, let's say, every time we have it, but we review it in the first one in 2 weeks, so that's 10 days. We send it back, however long it takes for them to get it back. The next one, it takes us 7 days, let's say, to review it, send it back. They send it back in and we review it again. If it takes us 3 days, 4 days, that puts us over the 30 days, but it's based on they did not send us quality material. So I guess that's my question and
Yeah.
wanted to include in the conversation.
Yeah, it depends on the quality of the application,
Yeah.
but that's why it would be a different process if that affected us, because we would have to kind of stop it at the counter and not intake it as a complete application to work it through the process for those problem children.
Well,
But again, that isn't,
And I think the intent was, or at least the intent was when, and I have a copy of it somewhere, when I put together, was basically based on when you have all your boxes checked, we expect you to have a permit within such a period of time.
Right.
If you don't check the boxes and you send us half stuff,
Yeah.
I'm not going to start the clock on you because that's on you.
and right
And if
now,
we send you all the boxes and we don't do our stuff,
Yep.
then we're going to reimburse you because that's on us.
correct.
So really the intent that I had with it, once the boxes are checked, these people should have a permit within whatever.
Which I agree with that, because number one, it's a better service to the citizen. Number
Yeah.
two, it's generating revenue quicker. We're getting stuff through the door a lot faster.
Yeah. I'm not, I want to avoid just what you're saying
Yes.
there. If you're getting garbage in, then they can't use that as a clock starter. You know, they can't take advantage of you. Yeah,
We do it with, currently we do what we can with the applications that we receive. We really work with the homeowners or the developers to get, it is what we need so we can process their application and get them what their ultimate goal is a permit to do whatever they're developing. Whether it be on the planning side or the building side, we truly try to work with the applications, but sometimes we get those problem people and then sometimes
I'll send,
we're just a couple weeks
I'll send the
getting
clerk,
permits out from when they come in the door now, so.
I'll send the clerk a copy of what I have and have her put it out to the other commissioners and others, just so you can kind of see what's in there. Hopefully my intent was when you have everything checked, we expect to have a permit within whatever. That would be something.
And
we
now we're
decide.
coordinating because we can do both at the same time. Public Works can be reviewing, environmental health can be reviewing, building can do their part, and planning can do their piece. So when all of those boxes are checked, the
Right.
permit goes out,
Yeah. when they
usually
bring in
that day
bill,
or the next
They
day.
don't have to wait 60 days to get the paper.
Not
They
at
get
all.
it within
As
24
soon
hours.
as
or
we have
whatever
that
it is.
last box checked,
Right.
they go out. Because that's our revenue. It's important to
Yeah.
us, very important.
So if somebody comes in for a permit with, say they had an outside engineering firm do all the work for them and it's all ready to go, is that still got to go through all of our hoops?
We review it to make sure they're compliant with our codes in case they're not in this county. A lot of times they'll go outside the county to get plan review or off Amazon, they can get different buildings you'd be amazed what kind of different plans we've gotten. But once we have everything, then we just we review it to meet current code for fire standards, and then they go out the door.
So if somebody brought in engineering plans for a road or a project, whatever it is, what does it mean as soon as you have everything? If they're, you have to check and make sure that those plans are complete
If
and they
it-
comply.
If they comply, and then if it's a road, currently, Public Works is doing the roads.
What kind of time frame are we talking for that turnaround?
For roads or for permitting, they're different.
Or if it's, you got engineering plans
Mhm.
and say that for the sake of argument that they are complete for a project, what kind of turnaround for a road would you expect to?
They go to Susan for that currently. For private roads, they go to Susan in Public Works. I won't answer.
It
Okay.
takes me 2 to 3 weeks to get to them because my schedule is full and I'm working on finding a solution for someone to look at it sooner.
Okay, we don't have anybody else available that you could send them to or get them checked off.
I'm working on training one of the younger engineers on staff so that he can start picking them up instead of them coming to my desk.
Okay, so is there a time frame on when you expect that person to be trained and up to speed?
I'd say by the end of June. So I'm going to be working with them the next couple of weeks. And during that time frame, I have a vacation and there's a conference in there, which is part of the reason why it's going to take so long.
Okay,
And are you looking to hire, is there positions posted for bringing people onto the office also?
Yes.
What are those?
So we have 2 open positions. One is the positions need to cover water, sewer, stormwater, and development review and diking. Those are what the positions are that are not currently filled. So I'm working on a current staff member helping out with development review until those are finished. Patrick is still helping me with diking and some of these lingering development reviews that he's been involved with. And then I'm pulling the water, sewer, and stormwater right now, in addition to my other duties.
Do we have any interviews for those open spots yet?
Yes, I have, do we have 2 or 3 next week? We have
Oh.
3 interviews next week. All second interviews.
No. I guess I can also mention, because it was brought up before, but it's nothing in concrete at this point in time. We're looking at transferring private roads back over to building and planning, but we need to get a good idea of what that looks like, because I think it'll take a little bit of ordinance rework.
Yes.
So that's another avenue that's being looked at. Okay. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for providing the sheet.
You're welcome.
And you sound like you probably shoot us an answer, and which one didn't you have? 127 Lone Oak? Okay. Thank you. Okay. We're at the 2:30 mark. We have Mediation Center in. Appreciate you coming over and visiting with us.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay, perfect. First try. All right. Well, thank you for having us. I think we're going to jump right in. We are doing a kind of a almost program end review of our housing stability program for you. I know, Rick, this is a program that should be a little familiar to you. For the Steves, I think this is going to be new, so I apologize if some of this is repetitive, but I wanted to kind of give you an overview of what we've been doing and what our plans are if this program continues. So I know I sent it out just yesterday, but did you get a chance to receive a slide deck PowerPoint of what I'm going to be going over? Oh, look at
I
that.
think she'll have it up here.
Perfect.
And did
Thank you
say-
so much for saving me on my late submission. I appreciate it.
Did you say for the Steves?
Steve's, yeah,
Oh, okay.
is that?
I thought that's what you said. I just wanted to make sure.
I'm surprised you guys haven't come up with that nickname already.
Well, that's what Judge Evans called
Yeah,
you
he
yesterday.
did.
It's gonna stick.
It was Steve squared during the.
There you go. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna do what I hate when other people do. I'm gonna kind of go through and read the PowerPoint. It is brief. And then if you have any questions, please stop me at any time. So if you want to go to the next slide, just a quick overview of what the Housing Stability Program is. So the Housing Stability Program is a program that is administered in part by the Community Mediation Center, which is myself, and we have some staff here as well, which I'll introduce in a minute. And the Housing Stability Program works with landlords and property management companies and their tenants to resolve issues of unpaid rent with the goal of improving communication between the parties and reducing instances of unlawful detainers being filed with the court. So that's the scope that we're talking about. Who does it help? It's open to anyone in Cowlitz County who is at risk of losing permanent housing due to lack of payment or lease agreement violations and their property management individual or company. We are a neutral third party, so we do not represent either side. We don't give legal advice. And this isn't just open to Kelso or Longview residents, it's anyone in the county. And how does it help? The Mediation Center provides conflict coaching, referrals to additional local resources and screening for Lower Columbia CAP rental assistance funds. And we also provide conciliation services and repayment plan guidance. So we're going to dive into what all of those are and how they help. So the next, it should be services by type. There's a little pie chart here. I hope I sent you the right one. There we go. So services by type, this is from when we started this program was the middle of 2023, so July of 2023 till April. That's the most recent data we have. That's the scope of what we're talking about. And as you can see here, this is broken into 4 sections. When we get either landlords or tenants who contact us and they are at risk of losing their housing, they're in this kind of I'm late on my payments, I'm not able to pay, or there's lease violations, and we feel like this program is right for them, this is where they end up. So as you can see, the biggest piece of that pie is conflict coaching. That's that huge blue section that makes up 427 of the 686 total. And those aren't people, those are unique addresses. So our households average over, 3.5 people per household, but this is, cases that we're talking about. And then the next largest piece of the pie there is the red one, which is referral, and I'll get into what that means in a minute. And then conciliation is that green piece at 47, and mediation is that little sliver at 7. So those are the 4 types of cases that we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to explain what I mean by each of those coming up. So that biggest piece of the pie there, that blue one, conflict coaching, what does that mean? That is when we are speaking with usually the tenant side of the 2 parties, and we've been contacted by a tenant who is either they know they're going to be late on their payments or they are already late and they need help. So conflict coaching is where, first of all, we listen to what their unique situation is because each household is very different. It's not a one-size-fits-all program. So we listen to the unique situation and the challenges of each client to find out, why do you think you're in this situation? How long have you been able to pay rent until now? We ask some screening questions like, is this a domestic violence situation? Are they waiting for Social Security benefits? Are they unable to find full-time work? And if so, why? So we kind of dig into what is their unique situation. And then some of the coaching part comes into asking them some tough questions that maybe they haven't been asked before. So that can be, if you're not currently working, why do you think that is? Are you lacking transportation? Can you get your driver's license? Can you get a ride with somebody? Can you get a job within walking distance? Drilling down a little bit into some of these questions as opposed to just hearing, well, I can't find work, there's nothing out there. Okay, what does that mean? Tell us a little bit more. How can we overcome these instead of just identifying that there's a barrier? Talking about their budget in loose terms, we're not budgeting experts, but sometimes just asking people how they are spending their income, if they do have income, it can be pretty obvious if they have some other non-essential expenses that sometimes people will talk themselves into. Well, I do spend $600 a month on specialty dog food. Maybe I can cut that out and put that toward rent. I mean, maybe you'd be shocked, maybe you wouldn't at some of the things that people choose to spend their money on if it's not what we would consider essential bills. And so sometimes just talking people through what are your resources and how can you reallocate those to keep you out of the situation is really what people need. They need some reality testing. And then part of it is providing communication strategies to individuals in conflict. A lot of what we find are that people who are at risk of eviction are scared and they're sometimes embarrassed. And a lot of times they don't have the confidence or even the communication skills to talk to their landlords or their housing providers about their situation. They want to avoid it. They think it's going to go away. And so sometimes asking them, how do you normally communicate with your landlord? Can you send them an email? Do you have a phone number? Is there a person in the office that you can talk to more and get them to kind of build themselves into being able to address these situations? Usually when there's a lack of payment, there's also a lack of communication. And so we try and address that to increase that communication between those parties. And then encouraging alternate plans if their current ideas are not working. So sometimes this means getting a second job. Sometimes they say, oh, well, I'm working, I'm just not getting any hours. Well, if you're not getting any hours, you're not getting any pay, can we come up with something else? What about a second job? What about getting a roommate? What about moving to an affordable place? Sometimes staying in that location is not the best option, and moving is the better option. So when we say conflict coaching, that is a unique situation for everybody, but it's us trying to find out what their specific barriers are and helping them overcome that on a very informal level. And then the next slice of the pie there is a referral. And that is when we have folks that come to us and they are at risk of losing their housing, but there's also another need there, that there's an existing organization in our county or in one of our cities that helps address that, but it's not us. So we try and make sure that folks are aware of all the resources that are out there. So when we do an info and referral case, maybe they're calling us and what they really need is not a mediator, they need an attorney. Maybe this has crossed into, lease violations and their landlord, is partially at fault here, and we're not qualified to give that kind of advice. So we say, you need legal advice, here's who you can contact. And we really strive to not just give them a list of resources, but to do a warm handoff where we say, here's the phone number, here's the address, here's the name of someone who you can call there, maybe here are their hours. Sometimes it's really exhausting for folks who are struggling to find local resources. If they keep getting answering machine after answering machine and they keep getting shut down, they can stop trying and they can stop reaching out for help. So we try and do that warm handoff. Some of the referrals that we do are employment. That's a big one. So resources such as WorkSource, Goodwill, Employers Overload, making sure that people are aware of if you're looking for work, where can you go? These are obviously just a sample. There's obviously lots of other employment resources in our county. Legal is another big one that we get. So there's resources such as Cowles-Okiakum Legal Aid, Northwest Justice Project, and then local landlord-tenant attorneys. Sometimes the landlords are the ones that need legal advice. They're unsure about how to navigate their side of it as well, and there are resources available for them on a state level as well. And then there's basic services that sometimes folks need, like showers, laundry, transportation. Some providers target specific groups such as veterans, seniors, families with young children, and there's so many resources, which is a great problem to have in our county, but sometimes it's hard to know what's their accurate phone number, what are their hours, how do I get a hold of these people? It's not enough just to know we have the resources, but how do we connect folks who are hurting and in need with the people that can address that immediately? Language services for interpretation. We've partnered with the Ethnic Support Council, and they've been extremely helpful in working with some of our Spanish-speaking or Chuukese clients is a big one where there can be a language barrier. And then utilities assistance, and eviction prevention rental assistance funds are usually different. So sometimes local churches or the Salvation Army can provide help for utilities. And then there's financial help for immediate relief to prevent eviction and maintain their current housing. And that's operated through Lower Columbia CAP, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. They operate the financial portion of the eviction prevention. We don't have funds that we dole out to people. Ours are strictly the soft skills, the mediation, the conflict coaching, the infos and referrals. Sometimes money is what's needed to help bridge the gap. If there is a temporary loss of employment, employment is regained, they can stay on top of things, but they're still behind on rent. That can be really hard to catch up. And some landlords are not willing or able to accept a repayment plan to get that paid up over time. And that's where sometimes just an infusion of funds can help people get back on track and stay on track. And then,
Can I ask a question?
of course,
On that, working with CAP, and they're probably about the only ones that do it now, or they're the predominant ones?
they're the predominant ones and they're the ones that do it on this large level,
Yeah.
yes.
I've heard stories, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I've heard stories that they're not always easy or efficient to work with. But they're about the only source. Or,
Are you
am I
asking
putting
me
you
a
on the spot?
question?
No, she does not want to comment.
Yeah,
No, I'm not going to say no comment. Oh, thank you.
I,
CAP does a lot of things besides this eviction prevention, and so they have a ton of different programs, so I would have to find out if this is this program that this person is referring to or something else. But Gina,
I've
please
just
weigh
heard
in.
they're not always easy to work with, and I'm wondering how we make that better, how we give more options so they have to get better type thing is where I'm going.
Yeah, we have had, I think they are the primary agency, and with this particular funding, it's really a partnership between the Mediation Center and CAP. So the financial assistance is specific to individuals who are being seen at the Mediation Center. And so they are doing some of that work, and then we go, okay, there's some financial assistance may be helpful. We'll get a referral to CAP. We've had some conversations and talked about some changes and some different things that we can do and look at moving forward so we can try to help address some efficiencies
Make the
and
process
make the
work a little
process,
easier.
yeah, make the process a little bit easier. So we're getting some of the information needed more upfront. So when it gets to CAP, it's easier to process and things like that. So we've been looking at that piece to try to figure out how we
Okay.
can make it a little bit more efficient.
Do these funds come down CAP specific? I mean, I know a lot of funds come down CAP specific.
These ones don't.
These don't. So if you had an entity that wanted to be a competitor or another provider, do they have that opportunity?
We could. So we could decide to send out an RFP or solicit for providers who are interested in issuing that financial assistance. We could
Okay.
do that.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
If we're going to offer help, I think we have to do the best we can to offer the help, and I don't like it when I hear people are dragging their feet if that's what they're charged to do.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay.
And at
thank
the
you.
very end of my riveting PowerPoint, there is a little bit of information about some changes that we are going to make. So I will come back to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Gina. Back to the part that specifically is Community Mediation Center focused is, does mediation and conciliation work? So those are those two very small pieces of the pie out of those 686 or so cases. 54 of them would reach what we considered the mediation or the conciliation stage. So it is a smaller portion of what we do. This is a portion that in the next couple of years, we want to see grow, and we have built some structure into our program for the next 2 years that would increase this kind of at a mandatory level. So mediation and conciliation is where we spend considerable amount of time either sitting at a table with the landlord and the tenant together, which is what we would call a mediation, where they're either present or they're on Zoom at the same time, or conciliation, which is the back and forth negotiations over the phone and through email, where they are basically pitching different plans to each other of repayment or move out, or, how can you change your living situation to where we can move forward without an eviction? So those would be very time consuming, but they are very effective. So I would say mediation and conciliation work in this landlord tenant eviction prevention model, But with 686 cases and only 54 of them getting to this point, this is an observation that we've made where we want to increase this size of the pie because we find that it's highly successful. So this next page, I think this is a very brief summary of over the last almost 2 years of working in this program. This is what we have observed. And then the next page is going to be our recommendations for changes that we would want to see based on these observations. So the first 3 things that we have observed, early intervention in the eviction process is a game changer. The longer people wait to reach out for help of any kind, whether it's to the mediation center or to CAP or to a church or to their neighbor or anywhere, the longer they wait, the options that they have decrease and decrease and decrease. So the sooner we can get people to pick up the phone and reach out, or we can reach them, the better. So tenant delays in reaching out for assistance or landlord delays in enforcing contract violations both contribute to the compounding issue at hand and severely limit possible resolutions available to the parties. So the sooner we can help, the more help we can be. When people come in and say, I have court on Friday, what can you do for me? There really isn't anything we can do at that point. Another observation is understanding the roles, rights, and responsibilities vary widely among all parties. So landlords have differing expectations of the unlawful detainer process and the options available to them before involving court. Some landlords have no idea that mediation is an option or that they don't have to get an attorney and go to court to resolve these. And tenants also have misconceptions about local resources and/or the consequences of not staying current on their rental obligations. So you may have heard stories of, my landlord won't come and fix my bathroom sink, so I'm not going to pay my rent. That's not really a viable option, but there's a lot of misconceptions about that. Some landlords are not fully aware of what their responsibilities are as a property owner, and some tenants are not aware of what resources are out there as well. And then the third observation is a lack of financial resources may be only one of many issues clients are facing. It is not usually write a check and make this problem go away. Several barriers can be present in possible eviction cases, such as fluency in English, delays in transfer payments from federal programs, rental increases forcing previously affordable housing to become untenable, seasonal employees managing irregular income throughout the year, unmet maintenance or repair needs, et cetera. It's usually not just money, there's other things involved. So those are our observations of the last couple of years. Before I move on to what our response is, any questions or comments from the 3 of you?
I have a question, and only because I visited a place a couple weeks ago that helps families out. And while we were there, they got a call, and I'm not saying that a landlord doesn't have a right to, this person, this mother and this child was losing the place they were in because the lease was coming up. The landlord had a set period of time for lease, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have a right to do that. I'm just wondering if, how prevalent that is, or if you see that. To
Meaning
me,
this-
it should be very small. It kind of struck me odd that
the situation of a landlord just refusing to
they
renew
just,
a lease with a tenant and renting it to someone else.
right.
That happens for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they're selling the property, sometimes they want to renovate, sometimes they think they can get more if they just release it to someone else, depending on how long that tenant has been there. It does happen quite a bit.
More than I thought. Okay.
Mm.
So I'm glad that you're here explaining all of this because I deal with this every week at church. I deal with the Chuquis environment and with the Spanish, or the Chuquis people and the Spanish-speaking people within our county. And we at church don't have a program quite like this, and I've been looking for somewhere to send these people to get resources that are available to them, because one of the things that we do right now, we sit down, evaluate their financial situation, what are you spending your bills on, and then I have to decide if I'm going to pay their back rent or if I'm going to pay their utility bill or, whatever we're going to do to help them. And something like this is actually, I didn't know you guys went this far and in depth in people's situations. This is something that I feel I will be able to utilize for the families that I help through church. And I mean, I'm sitting down with people every Sunday, different families. I'm back on my rent. I'm 3 months late. they're gonna cut my water off, that kind of stuff. And I had heard through the people, through my volunteers, when they send people to CAP, that they're having issues with that. And so they just stopped sending people there. And so then I'm one who, instead of going out and trying to find somebody to solve the problem, we just solve it ourselves and move forward. But I'm glad to see that you guys have these resources available, and I'm going to send people to you.
That's
So,
wonderful. Thank you.
yeah, that's good. It's good to see.
So, and I'm going to address that bottleneck in just a minute. The response that we feel is appropriate from staying in our lane as a mediation center, we're not a financial institution. We don't handle the purse strings of doling out money, but we do work in close partnership with CAP, and we are going to have some changes going forward. But for our response as a mediation center, these are kind of the three things that we have identified that we can do immediately. And the first one is an early intervention pilot program. And this is modeled after a very successful program in the city of Bellevue. And we, as a mediation center, are a part of a statewide organization called Resolution Washington. There's 21 centers, ours included, that serve all 39 counties in the state. And Bellevue is one of those. And they serve just the city of Bellevue inside of King County, I believe. And this is a program that they've been working on for the last 2 years. So we've been able to kind of partner with them and borrow some of their tools and find out how we can not recreate the wheel. And what that early intervention pilot program means is that we are reaching out directly to housing providers. So a rental agency or a landlord company, I won't name any, some of those that we've worked with in the past, and sit down and partner with them and say, when you give out your pay or vacate notices, as soon as someone is behind on rent, will you also give them our contact and referral information so we can get involved from day one, instead of them having to find us through some other resource and valuable time has been lost? The city of Bellevue has found that when they get involved early, like I said before, the resolution options are so much more successful. When you're talking about being 1 month behind on rent, as opposed to 3 or 4, your options are almost wide open, as opposed to either pay me my money or move out. And, you know, people get more desperate as time goes on. So we have already reached out to the local landlord and property management companies, and we've gotten some tentative feedback of, yes, this seems like something we'd be willing to do. So if we're funded for another couple of years, we're going to look into that and make sure that we're partnering as early as possible. As soon as those notices go out, they can get a hold of us and we can start working on this resolution. The second one is a community education program. So this would be sharing proven tactics for establishing and maintaining lines of communication between the parties. My ultimate goal is that within the next year to 2 years, our staff would be able to visit and talk to and give a free training to any single landlord or property management company that would have us come in and train them. They only have their experience. We've had the benefit of working with folks all across the county for 4 years now since we've done the ERP program, and I want to share our collective knowledge of how to de-escalate situations, how to better communicate with your tenants, what resources are out there to get legal documents translated into Chuckese or into Spanish and delivered to your tenants. I would love to be able to share that for free one time with any landlord or property management company to get them up to speed with what's going on. Again, this is not a legal clinic or legal advice. We would be sharing, you know, communication, de-escalation, relationship building with their tenants, because it is a relationship, not just a business partnership that these folks are into. And then this is the one where I think your questions center around is continued partnership with Lower Columbia CAP. As I said before, sometimes money is the issue. It's not the only issue, but sometimes it really comes down to the landlords need to get paid in order to run their business and pay their bills as well. So we want to continue to provide structured and thorough intake services for tenants and housing providers in these potential eviction situations to help identify all the barriers to housing retention. Based on the individual cases, we want to refer clients to financial, legal, or dispute resolution services to meet both their immediate need and their ongoing need. So immediate may be financial only, and ongoing may be they need to get a different job, a second job, they need legal advice, things along those lines. So we're kind of in it for the long haul, and we realize that just referring people to where they can get their back rent paid is not successful or a tenable option. I don't think that really helps it. That doesn't even really help the tenants in the long run, because then they're going to end back up in the same situation, which is what we want to avoid. So going forward, when we are working with CAP or whichever organization is responsible for the financial portion of this, a couple big changes. One is we want to increase the number of people that sit down and actually have a conversation. And what I mean by that is, if we get a tenant that comes to us and says, I'm 3 months behind on my rent, and we call the landlord, as would be our next step, and say, hey, we've got your tenant here, they're behind on rent, we'd, like to have a conversation. Oh, no, we're really not interested in having a conversation, we're just trying to get their back rent paid. Well, if this person is 3 months behind on rent, we obviously have a communication breakdown. That should never happen. There's steps along the way that should have taken place that have not taken place. And we're in a very precarious situation when someone's 3 months behind on rent and they're just now reaching out for help. So we want to expand how many folks sit down and actually have that mediation or conciliation conversation to those folks. So even when the landlord says, no, we just want access to rental assistance funds, there's no other issue, they're a great tenant. Okay, maybe they're a great tenant, but you've let them go 3 months and we're still in this situation. So we have some communication issues. So we'd like to sit down and actually have you mediate and build some of those communication skills that maybe they didn't have in order to get them into this place before we would refer them and just say, oh yeah, go to CAP and get your money. We want to reduce that bottleneck of people just waiting for a check and increase the amount of people that are receiving the communication and relationship building skills on our side of things before they go forward for the money portion of it.
And you said you have interpreters in Spanish and Chuukese?
We do. We have a staff member who speaks Spanish fluently for us, which is fantastic. And then we use the Ethnic Support Council for our Chuukese translation. Chuukese, it's a Pacific Island nation, and that's
For an
their
Asian.
specific language. It's very difficult to find documents interpreted in Chuukese. It's not a
There's-
mainstream language.
It's almost non-existent.
Yeah.
It is very difficult to do that. That's why I was asking if you had somebody that interpreted that language. It's a very unique culture.
And there are different dialects within that language by
Yeah.
itself. But we have begun reaching out to the Chuukese resources that are in Clark County. There's a larger population of Chuukese speakers down there. So we do have some additional resources that if this program continues, we could reach out to them and maybe offer a weekly clinic or a monthly clinic just for that population, because we have identified that as definitely a barrier for people understanding what's going on. Oh, great. Okay.
And I mean, I'm not telling you guys what you should and should not do, but I have often thought, particularly in the Chuukese, with that group of people, giving them a class, if you will, on American culture and how to assimilate into Western civilization, I guess, because they don't see anything wrong with showing up 45 minutes late to work or not going to work for a week, and they're just very laid back, which I can appreciate a certain aspect of that. But there are a lot of things that they just don't see why it's a big deal. Like I had a couple come to me on Sunday. I'm 3 months late on my rent and I need $6,000. Just like nothing, I said, well, why are you 3 months late? Well, because I had to take care of my sister in California because she was sick. Was there nobody else who could have, you know what I mean? It's a different culture and they think differently. And as I talk with them, they think that they don't see really anything wrong with it. So I thought, man, we need to have a class to teach them why your employer's mad when you don't go to work for 6 days and don't, you know what I mean? And don't call them type of a thing.
Mhm.
It's just a thought, but
That is an observation we have also
Yeah.
made.
yeah.
Well, I definitely like the education aspect. When I did just a handful of homes for CAP and for people that were part of the company I work for, they always sent them through a money management class, and it was very helpful. I never had an issue with any of those homes we built for that program. And so I think education's a big thing on it.
There-
I'm worried your job is going to get tougher. I worry because this state has imposed rent controls now, and I've never seen this work out very well in other places. So my fear is you're gonna be a little more burdened, but yeah. I like what you're doing. I like the way you approach things and I think you do a great job.
Thank you. We're really trying to take a look with a tooth comb over what has happened over the last couple years, what has gone well, and where are opportunities for growth. And I think that working with Gina and working with CAP on a closer basis, where we're meeting on a monthly instead of quarterly basis to just kind of share our notes as we can and say, what's working for you guys, what's working for us, to avoid those bottlenecks and help keep things running smoothly. People are already stressed out and at their wits' end, and we want to make sure we have our ducks in a row as different agencies. So we're providing a consistent message, and people are not frustrated. If we say we're here to help, we want to pick up the phone, we want to get back to them, we want to have our doors open as much as we can. And so I hear what you're saying, and that there is frustration. And when people finally do reach out for help, they can't get a hold of anyone. We want to reduce that as much as possible and be as available as we can for people. Any other questions?
Are you finding that landlords and property management companies are receptive to what you're offering more times than not?
Sometimes, yes. I don't know what the statistics are. I think that some larger property management companies feel like they can handle this in-house, and sometimes they have their own legal counsel, they have their own collection, agencies and things like that, and they feel like they don't need our services. And some of the smaller ones may take advantage because they're a 1 or 2 person operation and they welcome the help. But it's not as cut and dried as that. We do have some larger operations that recognize that we do have value. I do believe that in continuing to approach landlords and property managers and saying, we want to provide you with free information and education, people will always say yes to that. So I think that if we can go and offer that, a 90-minute or a 2-hour training for them, just as a one-time freebie, I think that'll help continue to keep those doors open. But once people realize what we do and that we're not representing the interests of the tenant and we're not on the tenant side, they're a lot more open to that, because we really are a neutral third party. We do not represent the interests of the tenants. We represent both sides, and that they come to a reasonable, sustainable solution.
So when your services are offered, are they predominantly more often accepted or rejected?
By the landlords and property management companies?
All of the above.
I'd ask my housing specialist if they want to weigh in on that. Yeah, pop up here and answer that one, because you're the expert. This is Gail Bishop. She's been with us for a couple of years, and she's a housing specialist, so she deals with this more than I do.
Oh, thank you. I think immediately when people come to us for help with landlord-tenant situations, a lot of times it was rent, because we were attached to CAP with the rent funding. And so a lot of people just had in mind, we have to go to them for the money. We're going to them for the money. So a lot of times we would answer the phone and they would say, I have this problem, blah, blah, blah. And then we would say, okay, well, what can we do to help you? And they're like, well, I just need money. So we would talk to them and see if there was any other options. A lot of times we would present them with options, but if money was the weighing, the heaviest part of it, they would proceed to the to rent assistance process. But a lot of times, either the rent assistance part wasn't going to fit them well, or it also wasn't exactly what they needed. If we contacted the landlord and offered them options as well, and talked to the tenant about the options, a lot of times they were receptive to those. We had, I think on our slide, it was 54 or something like that, cases that we worked with. If they hadn't been cut off by the idea of just getting the money to get them out of the problem in the beginning, then they were willing to work with us. And a lot of times it was more beneficial in the long run for them to work through our process. Is that what you
Okay.
were asking?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay.
Well, I can see that there's more value in a program like this than just handing somebody a rent check.
Yeah.
I can totally see that.
And I think at times, and hopefully it's rare, at times the solution is you're not going to be able to live here. And you have to deal with that. And I think, to me, that's, I don't know if you call it a win-win, but at least it's a recognition that I need to change or I need to do something different and I'm not running in trashing places and doing this other stuff. I think sometimes that reality check is needed for people.
It's true. Sometimes a move out plan is necessary and we try and get to that point before they get to that unlawful detainer or eviction court. We're trying to help take pressure off the courts as one of the services that we provide. And having an eviction on your record is a terrible thing and it can really haunt people for a long time. So we try and identify if this is not a sustainable situation for you, how can we help you move out? How can we help you get out of the situation without taking it all the way to eviction? Because sometimes staying in where they're living is not the best option. And we definitely have worked with people in that case.
There's no other questions on the program. I just wanted to give a little bit of background and what it looks like moving forward. So we've been able to partner with the Mediation Center through our Consolidated Homeless Grant and have passed down funding this last biennium to support some of this work that Laura has talked about. We anticipate a new contract coming for the next biennium. We've received, we don't have it yet, but we received an anticipated award that looks pretty similar to the last biennium. And so, we would look to maybe continue this partnership that we have moving forward. So once we get the state contract, then we would look at developing a new pass-through contract with the Mediation Center to continue this work. So, and we can talk more about the rent piece too down the road.
Well, I don't want to give the wrong impression. I don't care if CAP does it or not. I just feel if you take on your responsibility, you need to do it right. You need to be
Yeah.
on top of it. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And I know, and this may or may not be related to what commissioners have heard. I know we heard a couple things throughout the last couple of years, but it was more so related to the transition from what was like the old eviction prevention funding that was a lot more, it was a pretty large amount of money and not a lot of parameters to be able to access that funding. So the community, it was a kind of a rough transition to something that was more stringent. And I think someone talked about that a little bit, of people just saying, I just want the money. And, and we were sort of trying to get to a point of saying, well, let's go through a few things first before we decide that that's the appropriate avenue. So there's more work to be done around that avenue, but I heard some of that feedback as well, kind of around that transition from what was available to what is now available. So, yeah.
So Gina, just real quick, this thought just popped in my mind. You were in yesterday
Mhm.
and there was like an $8 million homeless
Mhm.
deal.
Mhm.
Are they funded through that money there?
Yes, it's that contract.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. So we haven't seen it yet. We got an estimated award and are still kind of working on some of those materials we have to submit to the state, but we anticipate a contract sometime in June.
And do we exhaust that fund every year?
So, no. It has changed a lot over the last couple of years, and there was some additional funding allocated in that contract. That 8 million, it's never been that high. So there was some specific funding approved through the legislature that ended up coming in that contract. It looks like we're seeing some of that continue for the next biennium. So we'll have to have some more in-depth conversations about what that looks like moving forward. As the estimated award looked to be about 11 million. Some of that funding I didn't expect would continue given the state's budget issues, but it looks like it is. So more to come on that piece.
So
Yeah.
I just want to be clear. So we fund CAP out of that and do we
Mhm.
also fund Mediation Center?
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yep.
it's from that same.
It's from that same contract. There was a specific budget line called eviction prevention. And that particular budget line comes from a document recording fee, actually. It was, there was a $100 document recording fee approved by the state a few years back. This particular budget line is that funding. It goes straight to the state and then it comes back to us in this grant.
Okay.
So that's where that particular funding is coming from.
What percentage of your budget is the county funding?
Is that a me question?
Yeah.
Percentage wise, 12–14%. And it's a reimbursement grant, so the only money that we're getting from the county is hours billed specifically to this program. It's not money paid up front then we spend. This is just one small program.
Any other questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And thank all of you for what you do over there.
Yeah.
Gina, would you have a list of all of the different agencies that offer assistance in Cowlitz County?
Possibly. Depends on what, are you talking specifically about rent assistance or any type of assistance?
I don't care what it is, food, rent,
Yep.
psychiatric care, I don't care what it is, anything
Yes.
and everything. I got asked this question last night, if I could come up with a list
yes.
of all those different agencies
Mhm.
and what they offer
We
that are in
have-
Cowlitz County.
Yep, I can send you, we have a resource list that we keep and send out to anyone who's interested. And so I'm happy to share that with you. It's, about 7 or 8 pages
If you
long
would,
of
please.
resources. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Mhm.
And I would just like to see the $8 million itemized who we send that to, who gets it, please.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything else? Any comments from public? Okay. Oh, yeah, thank you for reminding me. Three Rivers wastewater, who's the rep on that one? Commissioner Rader is. They want an alternate also.
When does that meet?
When do you
No
meet?
idea. I've never been to one of the meetings. I don't
Yeah,
have
it-
anything to say
No
when
wonder
they
they
are.
want an alternate.
They want an alternate because the primary doesn't show up. I think Commissioner Mortensen used to go to that. They're a good organization.
They have 2 meetings that is required, June 18th and December 17th.
Where do they meet at, you know?
I'm assuming that they meet at the plant. It says.
I think it's their local
460
facility. Yeah.
Fiber Way.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to stay on it? Fine.
Yeah, I,
Put me on as an alternate.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. Okay, anything else? Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.